Welcome everyone to Expanding Your Consciousness, and today is October the 11th. What we're going to do is other body experiences and near-death experiences. We'll be sharing stories and I'll be showing a couple of videos as well. And so my story of 2001, I was in New York City. It was the Labor Day weekend. And I was touring my sister around New York because I had been there in May 2001 for a conference. She had never been to New York before. And so, we went to the Twin Towers. We went to off-Broadway shows. And we also toured some of the museums. And one of those museums was the Metropolitan Museum of Art. As we were leaving, and I was going down the stairs, I was putting my sunglasses on and stepping forward, and I lost my balance and started to fall forward down the stairs. And anyone who's seen the Metropolitan Museum of Art stairs, it's usually about, I think it's about 10 steps, and then there's a landing, another 10 steps, and the landing. And it's a huge staircase. So anyway, as I was about to fall, I saw a dark figure to my right, and I reached out to grab it and went down the stairs thinking that I accidentally grabbed my sister, Nancy. And as I was going down, I was riding on the back of someone. I could only see the back of their head. I had a sense that it was a female. And I was holding my head up, and my arms were kind of pushing me up as I'm going down the stairs. And how I could do that, I don't know. But when I got to the landing, I, was startled, of course. And I looked up and I could see my sister running down the stairs towards me. And she's saying, are you all right, Diane? Are you all right? And I remember I was really puzzled because I thought, oh no, I had taken Nancy down the stairs with me, but thank goodness I didn't. She was okay, right? So I sat on the stairs and, I realized that I was injured. There was some blood on my face, and the woman was kind enough to come up and give me some tissue and that. And I had sprained my one wrist, and I fractured the other wrist. And had to go to the hospital, that sort of thing. So it was years before I figured out who that was that went down those stairs with me. And how I discovered it, or at least this is what who I think it was, is I actually think it was myself. And I think that because in 2011, I started reading Robert Monroe's books. And his first book was Journey Out of the Body. And he started talking about how we have a second body. And in his other books, he talks about the third body, etc., that we have, we're made up of different bodies. And so I think when I went down the stairs, that was my second body that I was looking at. And it was almost as if it was there as a barrier, as a way of protecting me. Because one thing Sister said to me is that it was a good thing you held your head up. And the reason I was holding my head up was because I could see the back of someone's head that as I was going down the stairs. So that's who I think it was. I think it was actually me, but I just didn't recognize it because how often do we look at the back of our head? So I just want to ask the group tonight, have they had any other body experiences or any near-death experiences? Anyone want to share anything? Ken?
I've taken, I used to be a member of a school called Training in Power. And the leader of that school is a woman named Faye Fitzgerald, who lives in Vancouver, in Burnaby, actually. And she teaches how to have it and how to develop that sense. And it's the most interesting thing. I can just remember something. So for example, I'm just reaching over here and I come up with this shell. Okay, so that's a shell. So what one of the exercises you do in the early stages, just hold the shell or anything else. We use a pair of scissors, a rock, a leaf, whatever. And then you imagine that you're projecting yourself into the solid part of the shell. So then you'd say, okay, now what does it feel like? Here I am in the middle of a shell. I'm a little microscopic thing in the middle of a shell. What does it feel like to be here? Then if you had a hunk of wood, say you had a block of wood, now I'm in the middle of a block of wood. What does that feel like? And if you practice doing that with an open mind, then that's one of the ways that you develop this. So I can remember, I was fascinated by this. Oh boy, I'm going to practice this and everything. And did it ever work for me? So I could project myself, whatever. I don't know what I was projecting, because as soon as you start to describe what it is, it gets pretty tricky, because then you can be asked questions. And so and most people want to explain what happened in terms of normal consciousness, waking consciousness. It doesn't work very well. You've got to kind of get into it. So then one of the next exercises she would do is she would say, okay, we're going to do an exercise where we're sitting in a room in somebody's house and there's a table sitting right there. So she said, okay, we're all going to go home. And then when we're getting ready for bed or we're just in bed, we're going to now imagine that we project ourselves back and look at that table. And then the next time we meet, you're going to tell me what was on the table, and I'm going to put some specific things on the table. So then we go back and meet, and it's a work in progress. You start off, you're not that good at it, and then as you practice and practice, you get better and better. So people then would come back and say, well, I saw this, whatever it was red and round, and then you look on the picture of what was on the table, and it was a deck of cards, and she was seeing the hearts on the cards. And so you kind of go like that. And I wish I could remember some of the other exercises, but the point is, this woman claimed to and actually did teach many, many people how to do this. And I only, like, the number of levels in her school, it's like going to school. You've got grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and all that. I got up to grade 6, but she's got lots of people in grade 16 and 20, way more advanced than me. And I can only imagine what they can do with this concept.
Yeah, I've never really tried that, but I have tried things such as trying to sense what it's like to be in someone else's body, right?
That's where it goes.
Yeah.
When you're healing somebody, that's what you do. Something goes into the body to diagnose what's wrong. So that's where this kind of leads. So that's quite a common thing to do, is to go in there if you're a healer.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you're
great.
in Faye's way of thinking, you're on the right track. Just keep doing it.
Yeah,
and that's the trick. It's keep doing it, keep practicing.
Yes.
Because for some people, it's just a gift and you can do it. Or like in your case, it just happened in a sort of a shocking moment where you were jolted into it. Mm-hmm. But you don't have to be jolted into it. You can just go in whenever you want if you practice.
Yes, and that's actually what Robert Monroe was getting into, right? Mm-hmm. Is he was training people. Mm-hmm. How to explore these different layers of consciousness. So if you like, what we could do right now is just look at a video of his. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm going to play maybe about 9.5 minutes of his talk, where he's talking about his gateway program, which is kind of breaking through the layers of consciousness. Now, Monroe passed away in 1995. So I would guess from this video, it looks like it's probably from the 1980s. And he's talking to his students.
How do you define something that is so intangible that even the results of it may not show up for weeks and perhaps months? Gateway in and of itself is properly defined as, say, a means of freedom, a new kind of freedom that perhaps you've never before experienced in your life. A chance at this new kind of freedom. Also, it's an exploration, say, of consciousness, and most particularly, your consciousness. How does it do this? Well, I'm sure you're aware of, right at this particular moment, what we call hemisync, or hemisync, a loose term that we use for hemispheric synchronization, which is what you're here to do, to experience the process of hemispheric synchronization. If you don't know about it, perhaps I should hand out some brochures that tell you what hemisync is. Suffice to say that it is a method. It is one of the tools, and perhaps the basic tool, that we use in Gateway. And speaking of tools, that's what the real process is the teaching of mental tools to achieve this freedom that we speak of. And that freedom can only be expressed by your own consciousness, not mine, not any of the people who help you go through this Gateway process. It comes from your own actions. Now, we have only one particular piece of dogma that you have to consider, and that is that you, the essence of you, are more than your physical body. What that means beyond that particular statement is part of the exploration of consciousness that you yourself will enter into. Consciousness, such a loose word to describe something that's so tremendously vast. And human consciousness in and of itself, what we know of it today, is only perhaps a fraction of the reality of what human consciousness can be. Gateway helps you explore the borders, the edges of human consciousness as we know it. The tools we provide, again, help you do and perform that exploration. One of the things that we insist on, that you do understand, that Gateway does not guarantee that you will have an out-of-body experience. Now, of course, I know you, a lot of you perhaps came saying, oh, I will have an out-of-body experience. Percentage-wise, I would say that, what, 15% of the people who attend a Gateway session have an out-of-body experience during the session. The tools are for consciousness, and the out-of-body state as we know it is a form of consciousness. The tools that we provide you perhaps at some time may let you achieve this state of being out of body. But there's no guarantees in this particular program that that will take place either during the program itself or subsequently. If so, I think you check with our friendly supervisors who are waiting nearby, and they will be glad to say, well, I'm sorry, this is not for you. If that's your total expectation, because we can't guarantee it. How could we guarantee what any human being will do? The opportunity, yes. The possibility, yes. The tools, as I said, yes. Guarantee, no. So, with that in mind, and that this is an exploration of consciousness for you, if you learn these tools and you apply them, indeed, it will give you an indescribable kind of freedom in the days, weeks, the rest of your life. That's what these tools can do. However, we have one small problem, maybe two, maybe three. To utilize these tools properly, you have to begin at least the primary stage of understanding yourself. How do you do this? You have to understand, first of all, what you are, where you are, and later on you will find perhaps why you are. There are barriers that you encounter in this exploration of consciousness. These barriers in and of themselves are not insurmountable, but albeit they are barriers. There are two, possibly three primary barriers that will stand in your way. The first of those is fear. And the fear association and the underlying pattern of fear-rage is the primary one. And you say, oh, I don't have any fear, or I don't have any rage within me. Some of the most profound people have made that statement, and when they begin to uncover other elements in their exploration of consciousness, elements of themselves, they discover this fear and this rage. And as they probe deeper, and this is why this thing is so important, this prime position of accepting or considering a belief, this rage and fear among most people has to do with death. It's a fear that I will die because of an immense pattern that you have developed from birth, perhaps imprinted at birth, that said survive. And we have learned to take that survival imprint just because of physical living. And that survival says physical survival. And physical survival is totally destroyed if there is such a thing as death. Once you have the knowledge of that fear, and it is the undercurrent of all of us, there is the related factor, and that's rage. What's the rage all about? The rage is due to the fact that you're going to have to die. See how they connect? Fear. I'm afraid I'm going to die. To anger because I have to die. And that defeats the whole concept, the entire concept of survival. Because that imprint you have learned or believe has to do strictly with physical survival. So much of your life has been geared to physical survival. Virtually all of our culture is aimed at physical survival. So what are we talking about? Consider that first pattern. The first pattern being, I am more than my physical body. If you consider that premise, that tiny piece of dogma, as possibly being real, then you have to consider very seriously that being more than your physical body, you also may well continue to be more than your physical body. That is one of the prime possibilities of freedom that Gateway provides. But the tools help you determine that there, one, is a pattern in existence where this more than the physical you survives a thing we call physical death. That's one of the prime ones. How is this covered over? This is covered over by the enculturation that is worldwide. It's not peculiar to our, quote, American cultural system. It's worldwide. the fact that we, in turn, have established belief systems that set up boundaries that encase all of us within a box. And that's the limit of our belief systems. And we feel safe and secure, as our culture helps us do, in these particular belief systems that create the box. And we do not want necessarily to remove the box. And in removing just a little crack in the box may seem very, very, very dangerous to all of these belief systems that have, well, perhaps we learned some of them on our mother's knee. Perhaps in school we learned them. They've been all around us. The things, the structures that create a box that limits us. Gateway helps you create windows and doors in that box.
Any comments, any things, any insight you got from that?
I would like to ask you, Diane, whether when you had your out-of-body experience, you were afraid. Because I have a feeling you were, that when you're just at the verge of falling down the stairs, you were really afraid. But that's exactly when your experience occurred. So this guy's saying it blocks, fear blocks it. But you know, in your case, I think it brought it out.
Yeah, it's interesting, Ken, because first of all, it happened so fast,
Yeah.
right? And as I was falling forward, it was as if it was in slow motion. It's as if there was some sort of manipulation in time and space too, right? And I didn't really feel any pain when I fell. Where I felt the pain afterwards, first of all, the woman that came with the tissue, you know, because I was bleeding, but she said, boy, are you going to feel this tomorrow? And I thought, whoa, I'm so glad she said that, because I wasn't even thinking about that, right? So I knew I had to prepare, right? You know, to get ice and that sort of stuff. And how my sister helped to prepare things for me, right? Because we knew that would be like an issue. But really, I didn't feel pain until I went to the hospital in New York, and he had to deal with the break, like realign it, right? So, but yeah, it's interesting. And with fear, I don't think my only fear actually was I was afraid that I'd taken my sister down the stairs with me, right? That was the thing more than me falling forward. And when I did fall forward, I could hear people gasping, like, oh, you know, like this, right, as I went forward. But like I said, it was all in slow motion. So, you know, it's interesting, when I had a purse snatching in Cairo in 2014, same thing. It happened really fast. Two guys on a bike, a motorbike, and the guy at the back grabbed my bag. I flipped, and, you know, I got up off the ground. I could, you know, I went like this, and there was blood on my hands and that sort of stuff, right? And some young Egyptian men, you know, came and, you know, helped me in that. But I really did not know that my elbow was broken. I did not feel any pain. I did not know anything was wrong until they took me to a pharmacy, and the pharmacist was, you know, cleaning my face with disinfectant and all this. And also he said, that doesn't look good. And he's looking at my left elbow, and I looked down and I could see it was all swollen. And again, I did not have, and they could not do any surgery for several days because it was so swollen. So, you know, I just, you know, stayed in my apartment with a swollen and broken elbow. But once they did the surgery is when I could feel the pain. And I really felt detached from everything. With that experience in New York and the one in Cairo, I really felt calm. And I just felt kind of almost as if I was in a liminal state between this material world in some other world, you know? So does that answer your question, Ken?
Sort of.
Well, I wonder if, Ken, you were kind of getting at, maybe it was fear that made your, your second body jump out and experience and get that protection from your out of body. Your second body jumped out, maybe because of the shock and fear, and then, I seem to remember things like this where people were in such a state of fear, or they were in an accident or something, but then they jumped out of their body just to avoid the the pain of it, and the so I mean, I think maybe, yeah, that the shock and fear can create the conditions where you have an out of body experience. I think that's really possible. But I think Monroe was leading to getting in touch with your fear and rage around death. And that's part of the whole point of his program, I think, is that you come up, you recognize that there is life after death. You're more than your physical body, and that continues. And he's saying that's our dogma, and that most people have fear of death, or get in touch with that fear of death. And I get, understandably, the rage, the disappointment that comes with that. Oh, I have to die. But that, like he said, that's part of the dogma, that unless you accept you're more than your body, you continue after death, then that opens you up to what their program is going to help you with, to get in touch with being able to navigate out of body and then go into these other realms of consciousness and get familiar with cosmology is maybe not the right word, but the map of what it looks like. And I could say what it looked like because I just finished reading his second book, Far Journeys, and the underlying message I got was that this is what happens out of body and where you explore. That has a lot to do with your perception on how, what that's going to look like and what you encounter. So anyway, interesting stuff.
Yes, my understanding is he tries to show through his travels that just as we manifest this material world we're in now, some people, when they leave this dimension, if you want to say that, or zone, can actually manifest things on the other side. And then this first book, I'm pretty sure it's his first book, he talks about how a doctor friend of his had passed on, and Monroe's traveling out of his body, and he meets the man, and the man has manifested or created a log cabin, and he's by a lake, and he's fishing. That was like his dream, to do that. And so I think Monroe's research is fascinating, the fact that he shows that we, as a form of consciousness, and we're individual too, right? In our experience, we perceive certain things due to our experience in this life we have, but also past lives. So.
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Part of what can happen, when we leave this body, either from through death, or from being able to develop the ability to travel out of your body while still alive in this realm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Has anyone here, like Gerda or Bear, have you had any experiences traveling out of your body, or Ken? Anything you'd like to share?
I have a story that my old teacher, Mervyn Brady, used to tell. It was a guy who fell off a cliff. It was in England, and he fell off a cliff and survived. So he had an experience that was a little bit like yours, Di. He, first of all, time slowed right down. And as he was falling, he noticed the flowers growing out of the side of the cliff. Beautiful little plants, little flowers growing there. And of course, time had slowed down a lot. And then he landed, and it was a sand at the bottom, so he managed to somehow survive, even though it was quite a fall. So that phenomenon of time slowing down is an experience that I've had, and other people who studied the martial arts. Sometimes when the combat is pretty intense, we never felt that out of body thing that people talk about, where they can look and see their body from a different point of view other than out these eyes. They're looking at through eyes that are looking at you instead of from you, looking at out there. So that's what I think of when I think of a out of body experience. But you know, the idea of having time slow down during martial arts, not so much the practice, but the actual physical fighting part, that's reasonably common. So it's not, it's the interesting thing is these are trained people. And I think that's the theme I'd like to emphasize is you've got to work at it to get these experiences, unless you want to fall down the stairs or get punched out in them in a fight. So if you want to cultivate it, you know, I think you can cultivate these things, and let's work on that.
Yes. There's a soccer player, and he said who was a goalie. And he said at one point he was stopping the ball, and he said you couldn't hear a sound, like the stadium was filled, right? Yeah. But it was pure silence, and everything was in slow motion, right? As he was trying to stop the ball. Yeah. So yeah, there are times when people can just be almost like in another dimension where the time is different.
Yeah, yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? Because we perceive time as a constant thing. And in fact, even in Albert Einstein's famous E=mc², c squared is distance over time. So that's the constant. But maybe that's not the way it really is. Maybe that's just the way we perceive it. Our relationship with time is linear, but that doesn't mean it's the only perception, the only way to perceive it. And obviously even our little human perception, sometimes it does slow right down.
Yes.
I remember that used to happen when I was a kid. The summer vacation was great. It lasted forever.
And it seems forever before Christmas Day, right? That's the presents pile up under the tree. Like, come on, we need Christmas Day. Okay, Dave, you're gonna say something?
Yeah, I've had, I guess it's happened when I was sleeping, and I've had either, you know, out of body experiences where I've been flying, you know, or lucid dreams where I'm aware of being in the dream and I can manipulate what happens in the dream somewhat. And one of my flying dreams, I used to read a bit of Carlos Castaneda, and he was training Don Juan, his shamanic guru, was teaching him how to have these out-of-body experiences. And he said, well, when you're in your dream and you can realize you're in your dream, you can get control of your dream if you look at your hand, and if you have that consciousness, then you know, you are now in control of your dream. So that happened once where I felt I was in a lucid dream and I met my two spirit guides, which were apparently two Indian gurus. And the one was always, and I've met them before in meditation and other dreams. And the one is very loving and kind, and the other one is very aloof. And, you know, it's like good cop, bad cop kind of relationship. Anyway, I met them in this dream and a very clear memory of what they looked like. And for some reason, we were inside a factory. And they were in the office in the middle of the factory. And anyway, I went in to talk to them, and they said, well, it's time for you to leave. It's time for you to go out. And so, okay, I trust you guys. So I go towards the door to exit, and I'm watching my hand, and I'm turning the knob. As I'm turning the door, I turned the knob and opened the door, and then I'm looking at my hand, and I went, oh my God, I'm looking at my hand. I am in control of my dream. And I said, great, I'm gonna fly. So I just start flying, and I went, oh, I gotta go visit my buddy Paul, you know. So I'm flying through Hamilton, and I'm just having a great time, you know. I'm above all the traffic going down King Street or Main Street, I guess, I forget which direction I was in. And I'm just having a great time. And then all of a sudden I kind of lose control and I spiral up, and then I'm flying, and next thing you know, I'm waking up in my body again. So I've had, you know, several of these flying dreams, and every time I have them now, it gets more and more complicated, and I'm flying. Last time I flew down to Bellingham, and I was for some reason I was hanging out in the Bellingham airport. I don't even know if they have one. And then the people around were going, well, you're not supposed to be here. How did you get here? You know? And I went, well, I don't want to get caught behind, you know, the enemy lines in the border. So I took off. I flew away, you know. And but I was flying all over in that dream, but I was flying from place to place, and I hung on to that ability, and from place to place for quite a while. And then I think I just yeah, next thing you know, I'm back in my body, and I'm waking up. And so that's sort of how it's happened for me. But I've had other, like, walking, you know, dreams, lucid dreams, where I'm very aware of, you know, being in another, you know, in a dream state. And I've met a couple of friends there in that state. And it's very strange when you meet, you know, some of your friends in that state. It's them, but they're different. You're seeing a different version of them somehow. I guess in this waking world, you have a perception of who they are. And in that other one, you're seeing maybe a more real, you know, a different dimensions to them, right? And the last time I had that, I met these two friends. I could really see their darker sides, you know. They weren't being nasty or whatever, but I could see through them a little more. I could see their fears and their anger, or the way they lean towards the darker side a little bit. I recognize that in them, you know, where when I would see them here, it was all just love and happiness, right? And, but in that realm, I would see a little deeper into their full nature, I guess you might say. That's sort of how my experiences have been.
Yeah, I do think our dreams reveal a lot, right, about people. I don't know whether I should share this story or not, but
It's about me. Don't use my name.
no, I won't. But and this was probably in the late 80s or so. I was working in the Historic House Museum, and across the street from that museum was a YWCA. and they had a cafeteria there, but they also did a bit of catering in that. And one of the women, we would order, like we were doing a garden party, and it was a celebration of the anniversary of when the museum had opened. And so we ordered the cake from the YWCA cafeteria. And a woman that was getting the cake and that, she was cutting it up, but she had been cutting onions first, took the knife that she cut the onions with and cut the cake.
Yum.
So anyway, when we got it to the event, it tasted like onion cake. Right? Okay. Well, I was angry about it, but I didn't say anything to her. But she had a dream of me being angry. She mentioned it to me the next time she saw me.
Oh,
Like she didn't even know, what had happened. She just said, I had a dream of you and you were really angry. You were furious, right? Because we had like hundreds of people and, this sort of stuff. It was big cake. So anyway, it just shows you, right? Be aware of your thoughts and your feelings, right? So anyway, so the next thing I'd like to share is a video of a fellow who I think he does a great job describing what he went through when he had this experience. I think it's good to look at these things because I don't know if you've met people or if you had this feeling yourself, but there are people that get really, they get anxiety attacks when they think about death and their own death, right? And I remember, Dave, I think this was about 2020 or 21, and we met one of your aunts. She came over to your mom's place and she was really upset, and it was and crying because she feared death. And a friend of mine, she actually has it written that when she passes, or no, if she becomes really, really ill and all that, she's about to pass, that they give her a particular drug before like she passes because she has this anxiety and this fear of death. What I like about this man's experience is he says, I did die. It wasn't near death. He said, I did die and then came back. So we'll share this.
Hello, my name is Philip Royce, and I'm going to tell you about my near-death experience. I prefer to call it my death experience because I actually died, and I remember coming back into my body. So when I go to say near-death experience, I hesitate because it doesn't really fit what happened to me. So let me tell you what happened. I was sick because of foodborne bacteria. I have been eating packaged salads from the grocery store that you buy. There's many brands, but sometimes they get contaminated with ugly bacteria like Listeria or E. coli, and I'm not sure which one I had. But this was in Dallas area. I lived in McKinney, and this was in December of 2012, and it was on the news. And I had been sick already for a few days with nausea, vomiting, pain in my stomach. And on the news, it was being reported that people were in the hospital with this breakout of bacteria from salad. And that's all I was eating, basically. I used to eat salads every day that were packaged bag salads. I had already had terrible sleep for about 3 days and was very weak, very exhausted, didn't have very much energy. It hurt to lay down because you lay down for, and 15 minutes you have to roll over and keep rolling over, and the pain would not stop. And then I would get out of bed and walk around and be so exhausted I would just fall back into the bed and then flip over back. And it was horrifying because I couldn't sleep and I had no more energy. I was just like I was gonna die. No more energy. So I got up and I got in the shower, and I had an enclosed shower that was like 30-inch by 30-inch glass shower tub, and it was about 4 inches deep with the drain in the middle. And it had the aluminum door frame on one side where you open the door with the magnet latch, And I got in the shower, closed the door, turned on the water as hot as it would go. And I was holding my hands against the tile and going around in a circle from the shower head, and it just felt so good, the hot water. And suddenly I had this projectile vomiting purge, and I just went, and I hit my head on the tile, and I slipped right off my feet, and I fell down into the enclosure tub, balled up, and my ribs on my left side were over the drain. So I remember I was on my face, and I remember looking at the shower tub and the chrome piece and thinking, don't fall asleep, you're gonna drown, because I was over the drain. And I had no energy to fight it, and I just told myself, oh, you'll be okay. And I just passed out. So the next thing I know, I'm in a place, it's like a room, the walls, it's like the size of a typical bedroom, and it had the floor of my bathroom, but yet there were other people I could see around me in other rooms. It was kind of like we were bubbles in caviar or something, but I could see that there were different people around me. There was a guy to my right that was on the floor, and he was on his hands and knees and moaning and heaving. It looked like he'd been food poisoned also. I could hear a woman moaning, and I could actually tell what she was thinking. She was sad because she had died and she had young children that she did not want to leave. I'm not realizing that I'm dead yet, but I'm obviously in a queue or some type of place where you go after you die to decompress or get out of your energy form of your earthly body or something. I don't know. I'm looking around and I'm noticing all of these people were in different states of the form or the way that they had died. And it's like we had all arrived at the same time, and it was just like a big queue. And I got the impression that we were moving somewhere, like toward the spirit world or some place that you go, maybe to process your spirit to get another body and come back through the moon to reincarnate or something like that. We were going somewhere. There was a method and a fabrication procedure to it, like, here we go. And these two beings came up to my room, and they were looking down at me. Now, these guys, they were male. I don't remember specifically their faces. I don't remember if they had long hair and beards or looked like angels or anything, but I have the impression that they were humanoid, but not exactly like us. So they came up, and there were two of them looking at me, and the one on my right said to the one on my left, he said, what is he doing here? He doesn't belong here. Send him back to the shower. And I went up immediately out of my cell or my bubble, and I turned around and I went back through this tunnel of light. It wasn't a white light, it was like the multicolored lights. So then that memory of that scene ends. Now I go back in a different time and I wake up. So I remember I was in the shower and I just got up and I was on my knees and I was going around in the water like this, and the water was really hot and I was enjoying it, and I thought, wow, I feel so much better. You know, since I had thrown up and fallen and gotten back up, I felt no pain. I thought, wow, I don't feel anything. And I had my eyes closed, and I was feeling the water go through my ribs and trickle down my ribs, and it was going around my heart, and it was going over all of my organs, my liver, my kidneys. I could feel all of my organs inside my body being stimulated by this hot, hot water, and just felt so good. And then I could see energy fields, and it was all the colors that you can imagine and more. It was like being, I was in that light being field where everything is made of light and color, frequency, and I could see energies, and I was using my hands to see and smell and read everything, texture, temperature, and I could see swirls and patterns and things that looked like those, you know, those Mandelbrot patterns where you have like that amoeba shape that as you zoom into it, it keeps repeating, and energies coming out of things. When the water would hit the water behind me, it would go into it would hit the surface of the water in the tub and then splash out like a shape of a hair follicle, and the energy would come out, and I was watching all the water drops hit the surface of the water, and it was all going right through me. And I did that. In time, it felt like it must have been about 25 minutes. And suddenly I realized, what am I doing? I thought, I've never done this before and had water going through my body and enjoyed it and seen all these things. And what is this I'm doing? So I opened my eyes and I looked down, and there was this naked body underneath me, balled up on the shower tub floor. It was like 30-inch by 30-inch shower tub floor. And I looked at it. I hadn't recognized myself yet. And I saw my head was next to the tile. And I was on my left cheek like this. And the water was up to about here. It was above like my temple right here. It's like 4.5, 5 inches deep. Only my head, this part was sticking out. And there was vomit on my head. And it was rainbow colored, peachy colored, and maybe you don't like these details. I was looking at it, but as a spirit, I didn't respond like, ooh, I just was looking at it. And then I could see bubbles going up the wall, up the tile. I had these 4-inch tiles, and I could actually see like a cloud of bubbles where the bacteria had digested and had gas, and they were climbing up the tile. I looked at the face, and I thought, yeah, that looks like me. Yeah, that's me. That is me. Yeah. And I looked around and I thought, well, it can't be good. I can't be breathing because my nose is underwater. My mouth is underwater. I think that's the only way. I had to think about it. That's the only way I could be breathing, and I'm not. And then it hit me all of a sudden. I just went, oh, no, I'm dead. And that fear, just everything flashed before me in less than a second. It was like, this is the way my family's going to find me. Who knows how many days later. I was all by myself in the house. I was divorced with shared custody of my children, and they would come over every week, so someone wasn't going to find me for a few days. And I thought there would probably be water running out in the street down the gutters until somebody busted down my door to find out what was going on, and if they hadn't seen me for a few days. And no one would know what happened to me. I would just be found drowned in my shower, And I did not want to be dead. And that fear, when I just realized, like, oh my God, I'm dead. It was like, just a lowering of frequency. I just literally just got sucked in. It was right through my chest. I just went right back into my chest. And it was painful. It's hard to come back into your body when you feel so good and you have no pain in the spirit world, in the energy world. And then you choose to come back. So then that memory stops. Then I remember I was in the shower, I was underwater, and my eyes opened. And I saw the water level up over my eye, and I realized that I had drowned. And the last thing before that I remembered is I told myself, don't pass out, you're going to drown. And I went, oh no, and I pushed off the floor, and I had to pull my skin off of the drain, which was going down the drain. I ripped myself off the drain, and I came out and I busted the door open, and I rolled out onto the bathroom floor, and I just exhaled water. It felt like for almost a minute. It was all coming out of my lungs. And I was looking at that and realizing, it's shooting like a garden hose out of my lungs, all of this water. Then I noticed around my hands, I was splashing on the floor, and my bathroom had about an inch of water. And I'm just bewildered. I'm looking around and I'm exhaling water. And I'm thinking, what happened? And then I got up, I stood up, and I looked in the mirror, and man, did I look different. My eyes were all just saggy and looked like my eyeballs were going to pop out. And on my ribs here, I had a ring with little nubs from the grill pattern of the drain. It looked like a French fry cutter. And my skin had started to, actually it was waterlogged and was starting to go down the drain with the negative pressure. I don't worry about death for sure anymore. I know we continue on and our spirit goes on forever. And there are different places we go. I've lost motivation for my career and for ladder climbing and for making a lot of money. A lot of things don't matter to me anymore. I don't have the will to have super nice material goods. A lot of my ex-colleagues and family, they think I've lost it and flipped out because I've just completely changed. I'm a different person. I'm much more spiritual, not as religious, not as organized religious, but I am much more spiritual. In this experience, I did not see the Lord or God, the Father, although I know they exist. It just wasn't my time.
Staring lost up at the
Right.
Yeah, what did you think?
Wow.
I love the way he described his experience, actually. And it does relate to the experiences that Monroe had in traveling, seeing things like waiting areas. I think, Dave, I don't know if it's in the book you read or in the first one, he talks about how people in the medical field, like doctors and nurses and that, when if they don't have, say, a religious belief and they're not really spiritually aware, they often will end up crossing over and into a clinical kind of setting. So they may be greeted by doctors or nurses on the other side. So anyway, Barry, do you have any comments?
I found it very interesting, especially the last guy.
Yeah.
I had never heard a story like it.
Hmm.
I think it was very original, and just the way he was startling himself as he progressed along and told it was almost like each stage that he came to, his recognition was very honest sounding, just
Yeah.
because of the way he brought it across. It sounded like he was really telling the truth. Like
Yeah.
Don't have much to say. I just wanted to see what you guys are up to.
Yeah.
Had any out of body death experiences?
Okay. Like you've never had any astral traveling experiences or anything like that?
No.
I remember going to a meeting where the woman talked about the Akashic records, which is supposed to be the records out in the ether for all the souls. But in that meeting, a woman talked about how she had traveled out of her body. And she says, I think I must have landed somewhere in Africa or something. And these shamans and that were all around like this fire and they're dancing and all this. And they saw her, like she landed, she looks at them and they're shocked. She's shocked. And then she projected herself out of there. But yeah, I think, people have these odd experiences, but they, who do they share them with? Like in a group like that, they would share it, but most cases they won't share it with other people.
It must be very difficult to try to understand, let alone share it with somebody, because you have to first describe it to yourself.
That's right.
Be comfortable with it, and then be able to put it in words that you can tell somebody else about it. And a lot of us who've gone through that, not myself so much included, people like Jeff Selver over on Brian's UFO channel and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You can see the process that it takes for them to, one, because when Jeff first started, he was pretty shaky. He was still getting over the fact that it happened to him, right? All these things.
Yeah.
And then as you get better at it, he was able to describe it. So one, that you have to accept it within your own realm of possibilities, and two, that you can describe it to somebody else as if it was now your experience. You have to accept that, the fact that it is your experience. That's the first thing. But then once you do, you have to try to relate that afterwards. And a tough thing to do when you come across things like that, when it happens to you.
Yeah, I also think the more, with Monroe and that, it's all about getting people familiar with these, first of all, their different bodies, but also with the different realms. So as they travel more and more or break through these different barriers, it does become more familiar to them. So it lessens the fear factor, right? One of those realms, by the way, that he talks about is the MI field or the mind field, because he says around this planet, all our negative feelings and thoughts and that gather like almost like a ring around the planet. And he said it's very noisy, and it's screechy, and so he has to pass through that to get into more uplifting kind of fields, and there he would come across benevolent beings and that sort of thing.
Can you just call it confusion on the way to understanding?
Yeah, basically, yeah, I would think so. Dave, can you share a few things that you recall from far journeys?
The M band, the mind band, is that noise when these Monroe or these other entities that he met out there, when they approach the earth, they can hear all that noise, and that's the noise of everybody's emotions and thinking. And it's interesting because like space-time doesn't exist out there. And so they could go into the future, and he was taken into the future. And as they approached Earth, I guess in what, I forget what year it would be, but it was in the future. And he said, oh, there's no M noise, there's no mind band noise. And it was the fact that the humans had evolved at this stage so that they had a much I guess more peaceful, calm mind. They weren't operating in the same realm or the same way. They weren't all caught up in mostly in materialism is what kept these people in that particular zone. But there is and I mean, Ken, you could relate to it with the levels of, of going, advancing or evolving through in a Buddhist kind of, cosmology or a way of advancing, evolving of your essence as you learn more and more and you advance and you get into higher realms, so it's very much about that. Was Monroe's experiences that he had guides that were helping him see how the earth is a way for the soul or the spirit, or the soul with spirit, evolve and move higher into higher frequencies and more understanding. And it's very interesting, and it's very hopeful. And the thing, if you're into really exploring and trying to move beyond this, I guess, or just expand your consciousness, it's there. We're much more than these bodies and this, what we're held to on earth. This isn't it. This is very much, according to Monroe, this is the school. This is a great realm for the being to evolve to a higher state. And that's reiterated in certainly in Geshe Kelsang's teachings, is that this is the best, or one of the best, or the best we know, realms to advance, and in human form, we're able to, I guess, grasp and be able to use our facilities to go within and find that we are much more than just this physical body.
Do you think that's basically what it is our understanding of what it takes to get into these different higher frequencies? I mean, they're there for us at all times. It's just how much we understand of them. What are we going to accept within our life that we understand? We can accept it, but unless we understand and have a basis for what it's all about, it won't mean much until we do that, until we really know, until we really understand what these things are about. And sometimes you look at them out there and they're like puffs of air, and this kind of thing happened to that person. But until it happens to you, and hopefully it'll happen to all of us, something that's going to turn our clocks or our mindset in a way that we are going to be different people in our understanding. And I don't know if some of us are going to be left behind, some of us are going to go advanced to something that's a little bit more interesting or just understandable than others. But it's a time of life, I think, that hasn't happened before. I don't want to give us too much credit for things, but nowadays I think we have a lot thrown at us, and we expect ourselves to know a lot more than we do. So kudos to those who are trying to learn and to understand things, but it will take time. The only way to do it is through experience. And I'm just hoping that I'll get my share of my own experiences, that I can graduate to some sort of higher frequency or higher way of understanding things. Anyways, damn mic, it's open. There we go.
Yeah.
Ken?
I have a story for you, and then I'm going to try to climb the ladder that Bear just put in front of me. So my father he didn't call it a near-death experience either. He actually died and then came back to life. And I forget how long he was out, but they gave him a special certificate and all that stuff. So a couple of years later, I asked him, did he have any of these near-death experiences and visuals and whatnot that other people have had? And he said no. So that's part one. Now, part two is for us to think about the different levels of consciousness that we have, that we are familiar with. One is waking consciousness, like right now.
Mm-hmm.
Two is dream consciousness, like, and Dave was talking about some pretty sophisticated dream experiences he had.
Yeah.
So within that, there's different lucid dreaming and all the kind of stuff he was talking about. I've had that for a short time too, but I like to get that back. Anyway, that's number two. Third is deep sleep. And deep sleep is the one. So I also have studied a little bit of Geshe Kelsang's theories, and deep sleep is one where we don't know because our memory doesn't function in deep sleep. So it seems to us like a blank spot in our consciousness. So what I believe might have happened to my father when I put these two stories together, and then I listened to the different experience, the two videos that we just saw, where people have, so it's possible that there is a whole experience going on when we're in what we call deep sleep. And that deep sleep, our mind is actually humming right along, having all kinds of experiences that we have no idea what it is because our memory goes blank. But for these people who have had trauma, including you, Di, where you fall down the stairs, and these experiences that shake us, so it's possible that what we're really experiencing is just experiencing our normal blank spot, very subtle mind, and we're remembering it this time. So all that might be happening is we're just being jolted into remembering. That waking consciousness can remember what this magical, mysterious mind experiences all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's functioning, it's functioning right now, but we have no access to it. I don't know if our dream mind is functioning right now. I've experimented in my own mind trying to have dreaming consciousness and waking consciousness simultaneously. And I think the exercise that Dave described with the Carlos Castaneda exercise, where you look for your hands. So there are other things you can look for too, but the idea is to shift this waking consciousness so that we have will in our dream consciousness, because will is what's missing from dream consciousness. Memory is what's missing from deep sleep. And who knows, I mean, I'm just going by the little scant bit of instruction I've had so far. As we learn, once we dissociate, we realize that the mind is a completely independent thing, nothing to do with the body. That's the problem with all the science that's going on now. They want to make the mind some kind of a mechanism or creation of the body. And of course, you don't get very far doing that. You can't get beyond your survival. And the fact that, oh, sorry, we can't survive. That's a loser's game. The body, the piece of meat here, has to die.
Yeah.
And with it, I'm afraid waking consciousness dies, probably dream consciousness dies, and that part that we can't remember when we're awake, maybe that's the part that goes on. So there's all kinds of cool things to think about here, but maybe it's not as magical as we think. Maybe we have access to it and we actually have experience in it, but we just forget.
That's right.
That's it. Yeah. According to, the research and the experiences that Monroe had, That's exactly it. And the deep sleep is when it says everybody has out of body experiences when they go into deep sleep, but they don't remember it. And this is, he chanced or accidentally found a way, or, you know, of experiencing that and having the, you know, wakeful mind in that realm. And he started to navigate that and came back with the, you know, experiences and chronicled it, you know, made diaries, and then, but he also did experiments, and he really he explored, and then he you know, he brought it back. He was doing this for years and years, but he thought it was too far out to talk about it. But he talked to one of his psychiatrist friends. He was a highly, yeah, he was a real professional in radio.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
And he finally got brave enough to talk to one of his friends who was a psychiatrist about it. And the psychiatrist was absolutely fascinated by it and said, no, you have to write, you have to teach people about this, you have to talk about it. But before he did it, he went through rigorous mental examination. He was tested by several psychiatrists and, you know, doctors to just say, like, he's sound, he's not, you know, wacky. And then he wrote his books, and then opened up the institute to do further experiments and train people. Sorry, Ken?
Well, Dave, I'd like to participate. If you're interested in exploring this using his techniques, I'd like to do that with you. I think I'd like to go in the direction you're talking.
Yeah, that'd be
If
good.
there are exercises and courses and stuff,
Yeah.
that's the door I want to knock on next.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Sorry, Bear, what were you going to say?
I forget.
Oh, sorry.
We were just checking online tonight because we knew that the Monroe Institute was in Virginia, but they also have it on the island here, just outside of Nanaimo.
Up in the News Bay, there's a Monroe Institute up there.
Yes.
Oh, boy.
And
Okay.
they do it's an 8-week course called Gateway, which of course, that's what Monroe was talking about in that 9-minute talk I was showing you. It's more of an introduction to it. But my understanding is it's done online.
It can be,
Oh.
but they're back. They're back. I did too. I started looking into it as well.
Mm.
They were on, you can do online, you can do, yeah, but yeah, I think you can go into their institute as well.
I worry that these disciplines that are thought to seek out and find these questions that are so mysterious to us somehow limit us in our free-flowing thought, our free thinking, and I worry to learn maybe too much when we're talking about these things. It's very general when I say these things, but in particular, what we can bring in to our understanding, if we siphon it through learning that other people have done, it takes away from the originality and what we can and will discover ourselves if we let ourselves go. Then again, if we don't do something about it and we just sort of laissez-faire about the whole thing, we're never going to do anything. But there's a toss-up between how much you can interest yourself in other people's teachings and how much you can yourself evaluate and go after the things that you most wish to find.
Yeah, Barry, I think you might have, did you see the video at the start with Monroe? Were you?
The guy that, yeah, the
older man? Okay, all right. Wasn't sure.
I like it.
He talks about how individual it is, right?
Yeah.
And he said we can't guarantee that you're going to experience it, or what you will experience if you do experience anything, right? Because he knows that it's very much an individual thing.
A very personal thing. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I liked his talk. I thought it was quite good, quite enlightening, just something you can understand, and it made a lot of sense.
Yeah. I do want to share this because I thought Barry would find it fascinating. It's my favorite part in Far Journeys, which is Monroe's second book. He had 3 books. So his last book was called Ultimate Journeys. But in this one, it's a chapter near the end called The Gathering. And he talks about being out of his body and he's seeing the earth as like a little pinhead off in the distance. And there's all these beings in different forms around him, also a huge spacecraft that goes for miles. Okay. So this is on page 230. We were out in space somewhere between the Earth and the Moon, indeterminate distance, 50,000 miles plus from the surface of Earth. It was very clear and detailed, not as it was before. I turned to look at the moon and blanked. He uses his own vocabulary when he gets into it. So blank, do you remember, Dave? It's he just empties his mind, I think,
Right.
or something. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. No more than 1,000 feet away or so, it seemed, was an immense, solid appearing object, gray in color, long and slender, conical shaped with a hemispheric dome at the widest end. So he sees this big object and somewhere in the distance, at least several miles, it's long. It's this long spacecraft type thing. It appeared motionless, but I had the definite percept of M band, and that's that mind band that's around the Earth, right? Radiation from it. A spaceship, a physical spaceship, it's questioning, right? And then a being is communicating telepathically to him. In your terms, that is correct. It is not a human construct. There are many of such around the physical Earth at this point. Their origins of your physical universe, but not necessarily of your time reference. And then Monroe says many could be 5 or 5,000. He's talking about the number of these crafts around the Earth. There was no point in trying to find out, but why around our Earth was it? And then the being says, they are focused on the planet Earth and humans just as you observed the others and for the same purpose. Shall we move on? And the answer will come soon. And then Monroe says, my curiosity accepted gladly. And so they, they're moving into another moment where they're out in space. He says, my immediate percept of the Earth was a pinpoint of reflected light in the distance, no larger than a small star. From it came irregular waves of energy, multidimensional, pulsing, intermittently broken by occasional quick flares, a complex, unorganized pattern composed not of light or electromagnetic or gravitic structure, but of some other energy that couldn't define. I was so completely fascinated by the display that I did not at first notice the background. As far as I could perceive, in all directions, with the Earth at the center, was a host of forms, countless numbers it seemed. Some had shape, others appeared as no more than a wisp of cloud vapor. All glowed in various degrees of intensity. From those nearest us, I had the same percept of expectancy, of waiting for the show to begin. It must be some big show to attract all of these, right? And he's referring to these beings all around. That's why this chapter is called The Gathering. So then the being says, it is what we call the gathering. These have manifested from other nearby energy systems only to witness the big show, as you call it, just as those within the physical spacecraft and your final process humans. This big show, which is about to occur, is actually a very rare event. The conflux of several different and intense energy fields arriving at the same point in your time space. It is this rarity that has attracted so much attention. in terms that you can perceive. It may occur once every 87 million of your Earth years. And then Monroe says, very long odds and a very long time to wait, right? I stopped there, but it's one of my favorite sections in the book because it kind of fits into what a lot of people have been saying. And that is there's an awakening process that's been going on this planet. And so what Monroe experienced was seeing all this energy around Earth and all these beings around the Earth, watching this process take place.
Sure makes you feel kind of small.
It does.
Have you read Susie Hansen? I thought I heard you had.
I read parts of her book. Yeah.
I really like what she says. It's just another person who's out there trying to understand and let other people understand. I can't imagine ever wanting to write a book until I knew exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
But even if you don't have, after having gone through so many of these different things, I really want to. This is what happened. I'm telling you, I don't understand it myself, but I gotta tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think though that there are these black operations, right? Government operations. So they can definitely do very sophisticated things and create very sophisticated crafts, right? And they can also manipulate the human mind very well. So I am very careful. Like with Monroe, I do think he's quite sincere in his experiences, but I do get a little concerned about people who keep going on about how evil mankind is, and we have to keep changing mankind, because I think when you study the negative force of this planet, you realize that is one of the main messages they keep putting out there, right? Is they really want us to hate being human. So any comments, Kenny, Dave? No? Susie, anything you'd like to share?
Who are they?
Have a good
Barry?
night.
Yeah. Barry, what were you saying?
Oh, you were adamant in saying they. Who are they? That you mentioned government, black.
Yeah. These black ops.
Who are these controllers and what government is it? What group of people is a government that?
Well, I mean, Barry, who's kind of behind all this, right? So we're kind of limited what we can say and post in videos.
I don't want to push you into a corner, but it's easy to clump everybody together. And it's difficult to go specifically as to the root of the evil and where it comes from. So thanks for mentioning. That's cool.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that Susie Hansen is incorrect in her experience or anything like that. I think she really had these experiences. But I have read accounts where people have said that these government operations are really sophisticated. Right? I mean, look at the technology that has come about in just a couple of decades, if that. Right.
That's a big worry nowadays, that there's going to be that big UFO psyop that is going to swallow everybody up and make us all believe that the earth is ending and we've got to do these things for the government now. Yeah. That's in the back of my mind all the time. What they call it, Project Blue Beam.
I've heard that, but I haven't really followed up on it. But yeah, it's
expose that and the treachery that was to be involved. But there's always something they're coming up to. Can I ask, when you think of, and they're always talking in the States and here in Canada about the deep state and those involved, who is holding us back? I'm not saying any particular group of people, but why aren't we continuing on an honest path? All I ever see is treachery and devious behavior from so many people in government and everything else. But when do we get the average person who basically populates the earth? When do we get to say ourselves what we think and what we feel? There's a lot of people just like me, and hopefully I'm as normal as anybody else, who are asking these questions, and we want to know. Where can we have our voice heard?
Well, I don't know. I think it's an individual thing, really. The fact that we have expanding your consciousness as a program, I think it's important, right, Kenny? Because it gives us a chance to discuss these ideas and these experiences. Because I do think you have to really expand your concept of what we are, right? And that sort of thing. But one thing Robert Monroe said that other people have said as well is that the earth is an energy farm. And he said there are beings outside the visible light that feed off of our energy, our negative energy, right? That's why, there is some truth when people say, work on, positive thoughts and that, because it lifts you, right? You feel lighter. You have more uplifting feelings and thoughts. And when you're in the state of fear, if you look at society, how they keep us in the state of fear, it keeps you feeling heavy and depressed and powerless, right? So I really thought his view, like, when he said it was an energy farm, that really fits into what people today are saying. Any other comments? Kenny, anything you'd like to share?
No, we're in a realm that I have no competence in, and anything I say will make me look even stupider than I am.
You're not a stupid man at all.
The trick in life is to say as little as possible, but look good.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
Well, anyway, I think that's it. But thank you for joining tonight. And I thought it was some interesting videos to watch as well. And like I said, if you ever want to read his books, I have a few here if you want to borrow them. And I think you find them fascinating, actually. And if Dave does do something with the Monroe Institute, he can contact you and share it with you if you're interested in joining. So, all right.
I like exploring these kind of things.
I do too. Yeah. And I think his research, his work is fascinating. So thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Right.
Yeah.